Podcorn. This podcast is brought to you by MC2424A, IPR MSA, UITM, Malacca Chapter.
Hello, and good day, everyone. You're with me again, Khairul Muzammel, for today's episode of our podcast. Today's episode is about Homeless by 50, which I will be talking about an issue that is close to our heart and has become one of the major concerns in adulthood. I believe most of you might think about this issue once in a while. In fact, I am intrigued to talk about this topic today after several Tete sessions with my bros a few weeks before, which I thought will be interesting. Unfortunately, we don't have any guests for today's topic, so please bear with me. Want to know more? Plug into your headphones or increase your volume. Grab some kuih raya or lemang and rendang. We'll get to the topic shortly. Today's topic is about property poverty. What is property poverty, you might ask? Property poverty is the inability for members of the society to possess or acquire a house. This type of poverty happens not only to people without steady income, but also to those who have a steady income and being paid monthly, and those who maybe own multiple cars. Based on Maslow in 1943, a shelter or house falls under the safety and security in the hierarchy of needs, which is the second level of needs, coming after foods, water, and clothes. This shows the importance of possessing a house for mankind. In Malaysia, property poverty rate increases, especially in developed cities such as Johor Bahru, Kuala Lumpur, and Shah Alam. The indicator of property poverty in Malaysia is the overhang or excessive amount of uninhabited property. According to National Property Information Centre, in 2022, index of unsold housing property has increased by 24.7%, which equivalent to 36,863 unit worth of 22.8 billion ringgit Malaysia as of December 2021. This is compared to the same period in the year before. Selangor currently leads the table of unsold properties, followed by Johor, Pulau Pinang, and Kuala Lumpur. Property poverty has left millions, if not thousands, of Malaysians without a home of their own. Hence, they opted for rental houses. What's worsening is there are some who is really unfortunate enough ended up living under the bridge and on the sidewalk of the city due to their inability to acquire a house of their own. With the current increase in cost of living, it seems that a significant number of them have to rent till their 50s. Before we go deeper into this topic, please let me sip my drink. You can never go wrong with a hot cup of tea. So back to the topic. What are the reasons that cause property poverty? Property poverty happens when housing prices surge and are supported with few other contributing factors. Normally are financial management, economic crisis or inflation, and low minimum wage. Since the Asian economic crisis hit the region, property prices in Malaysia have skyrocketed. Nearly 30 years after the Asian economic crisis in late 1990s, house prices increased steadily, and the situation is worrying and worsening from time to time. According to Trading Economics in 2023, the Malaysian house price index increased from 203.50 in the year 2022 as of July 2022 to 207.40 in January 2023. So who are affected by this property poverty? The low income group, or coined by the Malaysian government as B40, are the most impacted group, with a minimum salary set at 1,500 ringgit Malaysia. An increase in cost of living and property unit value, it hinders this low income group to buy a house, especially for those who work in big and developed cities such as Kuala Lumpur, Penang and Johor Bahru. Nevertheless, there are also individuals from middle income groups, or M40, who face similar problems, mostly due to their high financial commitment, which restrain them from possessing a house. If fortunate enough, migrating to a less developed area and building a house according to their capital might be the best option for them to settle down. Now, most of you might probably wonder how much is the difference in house price tag between then and now. When talking about housing price tag differences, it always reminds me of my father. In the 90s, my father managed to purchase a 2-story terrace house in Wangsa Maju, Kuala Lumpur for only 90,000 ringgit Malaysia. Nowadays, the price tag for the exact house is between 600,000 to 850,000 ringgit Malaysia upon my research on Property Guru website. Meanwhile, the 90k price tag is nowhere to be found nationwide. According to National Bank of Malaysia in 2022, 76% of Malaysia's monthly household income is below 8,333 ringgit, which enables them to obtain a house with a maximum price tag of 300,000 ringgit Malaysia. However, only 36% of the new housing program launched come with price tag lesser than 300,000 ringgit Malaysia. So, how does the government react to property poverty, you might also ask? The government during Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Razak has introduced several solutions in order to combat property poverty, such as the introduction of Perumahan Rakyat Satu Malaysia, or PRIMA, and Rumah Pertamaku scheme. PRIMA is a program that provides conducive and affordable houses catered for low and middle income groups. The government has underlined that PRIMA houses should range from 100,000 to 400,000 ringgit Malaysia. To add to that, the government also introduced the Rumah Pertamaku scheme dated back in 2011 to encourage individuals that can afford to buy their first house. This scheme enabled eligible applicants to make a loan financing up to 110% of the property price. Subsequently, some state governments also began their initiative to provide their population with opportunities to acquire affordable houses in order to complete Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The state government of Selangor has launched the Rumah Selangorku, aim to provide affordable houses for anyone in the low income and middle income group who currently work in Selangor. Some of the houses are below 200,000 ringgit Malaysia, which can be considered as affordable nowadays with the inflation rate and cost of living being put into consideration. So let's move on to the next section, which is how our neighbors approach in combating property poverty. Our neighbors down south, which is Singapore, have a unique housing policy that, in my opinion, is impactful in the cause of deterring property poverty. Singapore maintains about 90% house ownership for years and has been on the top of the table for international house ownership rate. Based on Statista in 2022, only in the year 2020, the house ownership in Singapore drops from 90.4% in 2019 to 87.9% in 2020. In Singapore, 80% of them live in public housing premises, or colloquially known as HDBs. Housing in Singapore is monitored and administered by the Housing and Development Board, or HDB. The board introduced a public housing program to help Singaporeans to own houses by building government-owned flats and apartments. The flats and apartments are leased for a 99 years period to citizens that pass the ownership and income requirements set by the government. This 99 years lease cannot be inherited. However, there are multi-generational houses provided by the government, but with it also comes with higher price and different terms and conditions. The house also come in variety, where citizens can choose from 2-bedroom flats and up to 4-bedroom flats or apartment to reside. The home ownership is financed by the Central Provident Fund, or CPF, which is a fund from employees and employers' contribution, more or less similar to our KWSP in nature. But this CPF is for every Singaporean, unlike our KWSP, which is mainly for private sector workers. This policy granted the government constant revenue and also made houses more affordable to the population of Singapore. Both policies introduced by Malaysia's and Singapore's governments have their own pros and cons. Honestly speaking, I believe Singapore's policies are more realistic and may be impactful towards ensuring every citizen has a house ownership. I will start with our country's policies first and foremost. The Prima, Selangorku and Rumah Pertamaku scheme and all programs or schemes within its nature gives full house ownership and are not state-owned at the end of the day. Furthermore, if there is any excess in terms of monetaries on the owner's hand, it can be used to decorate or renovate the house or simply save it for the next planning. So the cons for this may be the tenure of financial loan, which normally is around 35 years for owners to completely pay the amount of loan applied and its interest. This results in a large sum of money having to be spent to the bank monthly according to the property value and the interest rate set by the bank. So on the other hand, Singapore's public housing policy are more impactful in the cause of deterring property poverty. The 99 years lease ensures a lesser amount of money spent to pay for the house, but the house will revert to state-owned once the lease period is over and the inhabitants have to renew the lease, meaning that a complete ownership of the house is non-existent. For some who save enough funds, they may have opted for private property once the lease reach its expiry date and gain full ownership of the private property. Singapore's policies provide a lesser sum of money being spent monthly, but are difficult to be implemented in Malaysia due to the norm of our society that wanted total ownership of the property at the end of the day. Hence, I believe the solution provided by Malaysian government are more rational to our society, if not so impactful enough. In conclusion, I believe members of the society and the government have to play their part in preventing property poverty. I hope every member of the society, especially my friends who are in their 20s and 30s, take their own initiative. A portion of our monthly income should be allocated to acquire a house, as we all know the price tag of house only increase based on past year's data. We still have time to build our future, dear friends. A house is important for everyone, especially when you're in your 50s and planning on settling down. Would you bear to pay rents till your last day, or worse, be sleeping on the sidewalk once you retire? So, on the other hand, the government should also increase the minimum wage so that more members of society are able to make ends meet and save up their money to acquire a house in the future. Development of new housing program from private developers must also control to avoid property overhang and the surge of property value. The latest approach done by our 10th Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim on lowering the cement price, in my opinion, will also be impactful in terms of controlling housing prices, because when the cost to erect a house decrease, theoretically the resale value of the house should also be increased, or the property value should also be decreased. If necessary, the government should impose policies that endorse these developers to focus on building low-cost housing program rather than luxurious residence. Before I say my goodbye, I would like to wish every one of you Selamat Hari Raya Aidilfitri. Maaf Zahir dan Batin. Till next time. Ciao.